The girl who assigned as her temporary maid Becky is from my hometown. When she was young she lost her parents in a fire accident, and lived in our house for a year. And the orphan who originally had no relatives like that doesn't be accepted her a decent maid, my lady. Because if she gets involved in an accident there's no one who can guarantee her identity. We didn't really get along at the time, but my parents liked her and wrote her the guarantee when she applied with me for the dukedom. Hesitantly she whispered to me in the hollow of my ear, if you mention the warranty she'll willingly do anything. There was a glimmer of insanity in her brown eyes. I paused for a moment at her words and soon narrowed my brows and asked, "Are you serious?" "Well, of course," Emily nodded enthusiastically. "What if she's trying to take your place while she's in the mansion?" She appealed to me with a serious look. No matter how much I looked at it, it seemed to be sincere without any ulterior motives. At that sight I burst into laughter. "That way we'll be prepared in advance." Emily, in deep cogitation, noticed my face full of laughter one step later. "Lady, this is not the time to laugh like that," she blurted as if she was resentful. "Sorry." I finally managed to stop laughing and answered, "But that's too typical of a villain, Emily. I'm dead serious. Otherwise I wouldn't sell my hometown friend." She sighed and grumbled. It seemed to be true that she was deeply troubled. "I don't know if it's for me or for her future, that depends on my position," but her words warmed me up. "Okay, thanks for worrying." I nodded my head and thanked her without a hunch. Emily looked back at me with her eyes shining brightly. "So you're willing to follow my plan, right?" Well, I thought for a moment. It was convenient to have someone done for you without having to lift a finger, but I didn't think being entangled with Yvonne's daily life would be of great help. After all, I'm well aware of what's going to happen in normal mode. No thinking about it so far. I must get rid of this overconfidence of mine. The story of normal mode and hard mode are completely different. I could no longer believe now that Yvonne would be the same as in normal mode. I don't need to know her every move. If the tales is too long you'll just be trampled on. I took a moment of reflection. Tell Becky to report only when she's up to something suspicious. Yes, for example. I recalled instinctively the white-dressed woman I saw in Soleil Island, mask relic pieces of a broken mirror. If she seems obsessed with something or behaves strangely. Emily replied with a determined look. "Oh gosh, I see what you mean. Just leave it to me." To speak frankly, I had no big expectation. If the hostess is indeed a member of Layla clan, she won't act stupidly before a maid to be found suspicious. But seeing Emily looking so determined was so cute that it made me laugh for a short time once again. "She must have noticed that I'm feeling better, miss. Then now are you going to have dinner?" asked carefully Emily, watching my reaction. At that moment I barely managed to hold on my face features that were drifting away. "Now there's someone who will take care of me if I starve." I let out a light voice, pressing down my stomach, swirling of unknown emotion. "Emily, yes, you're doing a pretty good job taking care of me." At what I said, Emily was astonished and replied with a gentle smile, "Of course, miss, I'm your maid." "Well then, bring me dinner." "Yes, miss, I'll be right back." "You won't wait long." Emily hurried out of the room with a colorful face. Fortunately, there's still someone in this mansion who cares about Penelope, whether she's starving herself up or not. After all the hustle and bustle of Yvonne's appearance, the next morning after breakfast the butler came to my visit with a message from the Duke. "I'll be ready soon, so wait outside." Yesterday I heard from Emily that Yvonne had been staying in the mansion, so I didn't think I'd be summoned this early. I immediately followed the butler to the Duke's office. "Knock, knock." "Come in." With the permission to come in. The butler opened the door. I stepped inside with a light strain. We had a great deal of things to discuss. The Duke, as for him, sat at the desk with a thick cigar in his mouth. In front of him a plethora of files were piled up. "Father, you came?" He looked up at me. I could tell at first glance that he stayed up all night sorting things up from his tired face and puffy eyes. "Take a seat." He rose from his place, settled on the sofa, and then kept staring at me. Even after the maid came in and prepared the refreshments, the Duke, silent as ever, pulled out another cigar and burned it without a word. The atmosphere was getting more and more stifling. It was about time to break the silence. Finally the Duke opened his mouth heavily, bringing out his cigarette in ashes. "Penelope," with a stern voice I replied with a slightly disorganized posture. "Yes, father." "You asked your brother to give you a teacher without me knowing? Why didn't you tell me in advance?" In fact, this was a bigger problem in my eyes than Yvonne passing the test. As expected, they turned a blind eye to what I might be feeling. Ultimately, I ended up speaking my mind. "I thought you'd oppose it." The Duke breathed a deep sigh. Although he was just a character in the game, I couldn't help but flinch at the heavy aura emanating from him. Last morning your brother arrested slaves of Delman who were about to flee from the port of Prebu and handed them over to the Imperial Palace. And you know the price of such felony. The execution took place today. I've come to agree with Eckles' statement. My heart stiffened at the word of execution, however, due to the vague conjecture that this would happen through the words of the butler. The shock did not last long. Quietly listening, the Duke spoke with a more subdued voice. The Delman's slaves escaped by selling the herbs you gave them. The funds are still intact. If the Imperial Palace had noticed first and proceeded with the investigation, not only you but the whole Eckhart family would be doomed. My hands on my knees clenched in a fist the hem of my skirt. I truly regretted my impulsive act at the time. I didn't imagine that my genuine intentions would turn into a nightmare. But I'm glad I didn't give him the gold coins. I was worried of what would have happened if I had handed over that small amount of money instead of the medicinal herbs. I opened my mouth facing the ground. I'm sorry I acted rashly. It's my fault. I'm willing to accept any punishment. I heard everything from the butler. The Duke suddenly stopped me from speaking. You didn't have a bad heart. How you gave him your teacher, how you gave him his herbs. It's all in your heart. I slowly raised my head and stared blankly at him with perplexed eyes. Unlike Penelope, the Duke was in no position to make a fuss about it, even if there was record of taking a slave of the defeated country in the mansion. God damn it, I've had a story of freeing a defeated slave out of mansion and almost putting Duke's family in danger. It wasn't all intended, but it happened as a result because Eckles, that man made it that way. I guess the Duke would be angry at me, but he said yesterday and today, didn't you just keep getting surprise? I called because I was worried. I'm not trying to find fault. Even though he was very tired, he was carefully watching over slightest changes in my mood, so he spoke to the main point with a faint sigh. Penelope, the child Yvonne, I decided to let her in the mansion for a while. I knew it, but I couldn't help but feel down at his words, like a person clinging to a ray of hope. Yes, it is. I laughed coldly inside. The long preamble and forgiveness in the preceding days were, after all, just the ground base for this main event. Despite the shocking news, the Duke avoided looking at me expressionless. I looked at him and asked, did she pass all the tests? It isn't because she lost her memory, but... The Duke hesitated and added, all the answers about her mother were right. In addition, the dot's position was the same. And Evelyn, I mean, she was born with a dot in the middle just like my dead wife. I see. It didn't impress me much. I already knew it all. I belatedly realized that I had answered so insincerely, and forced my lips opened and answered, congratulations, Father. What? The face of the Duke looked devastated. But soon the Duke's face became blank. For him it was hard to believe that I said such a thing. The Duke stared at me with astonished eyes. I opened my mouth with serious look. You've finally found your daughter whom you've been looking for a long time, Penelope? He asked in a tone full of hesitation, incredibly contrasting with the stern look he had just made. Will you be all right if I let the child stay in the mansion? Of course, thank you for asking my opinion, but this matter doesn't require my permission. His blue eyes, hardened by the shock, shook helplessly. No matter how distraught I was with the treachery of Eclipse, my opponent now was the Duke. I don't think it's fair for a fake to go wild when you're telling me your real daughter is back. Moreover, before the start of normal mode, I only wanted a complete escape. I wasn't even surprised by the Duke's words, as I knew this would happen from the beginning and didn't expect anything. The Duke looked at me with a lingering glance, as if he was looking through me. If you don't like it, I don't send her to the dukedom yet. He responded unexpectedly. He could tell I was lying. It was all over my face. As I was lowering my eyes, I took a brief glance at him. Even though I had trampled on him, my heart fluttered with anticipation, and I raised my head slightly. The tired Duke was facing me with such a complex face. I'm usually not quick on grasp on these things, but I realized this reflexively. Are you serious? I never imagined that I'd ever make such a sound. I'd been thinking about it all night, but rather than the constant commotion in the same house, I'd rather her stay away from everyone until it was clear that she was really Yvonne. Father. I cut off the Duke's words in the middle. I noticed how concerned he was as he forcibly moved his facial muscles to let appear a stiff smile. She has to enter to dukedom, Penelope, even if she turns out as my father's biological daughter. I have no intention of making a fuss. The persistent fuss he kept on mentioning was directed to me all the way. If you're afraid that I'm going to hurt her, don't worry, that's not going to happen. The Duke's shoulders flinched at my words. He shook his head hurriedly. I don't mean that. Isn't that why I have new escorts in spite of being in the house? The Duke's mouth shut in a single line at my words. Penelope's record was so splendid that it was understandable to have such concerns in normal mode. She was jealous of the attention of her family, and male leads to the heroine, and she tried to poison Yvonne. That's why the Duke's response was natural. No wonder why I was upset. It was heartbreaking and my stomach felt sore. Don't worry, Father. I rephrased my words with a desperate smile to comfort my shallow self. I thank you enough for the grace you've showed upon me so far. I'm not a child anymore. I'm past the age of being mean. The Duke, who had been silent for a long time at my words, softened his lips. Then the day before yesterday, why, he immediately shut his mouth as if it were a mistake. He couldn't help but notice that there was a question the day before yesterday when Eckles brought in Yvonne about why I behaved in such way. I wiped the smile off my face. But don't try to take away the few things I have and give them to her. Pardon, Father, I brought him to here and Eckles is my escort. If you're finished with the interrogation, please give him back to me after that. What matters the most right now was neither the appearance of Yvonne nor the state of the Duke's family. After all this mess, he was still my personal male lead with 99% of favorability. Give Eckles back to me, Father. My determined voice hardened the Duke's face. He answered with a deep sigh. Yvonne seemed to want him by her side. I think that she needs a familiar face since she's still not well acquainted with this place. Are you going to do it? Penelope dear, the Duke softly stopped me from asking any further questions. You see, this father of yours doesn't like him at all. Because he had an affair with the same slaves? But you said it was all in line with what Eckles said. It's not like that. If so, that was a very hard reason to understand. Looking at him with an incomprehensible look, I shook my head. He explained reluctantly, looking to my eyes and urging me to hear the answer. Just before Derek executed the slaves, he heard some strange rumors. What kind of rumor? When the slaves were debating where to fund their escape, he was the one to advise them to sell the herbs you gave him. I opened my eyes wide at his last sentence. Does he see me as a pushover? The more I knew, the more I got goosebumps at the work under him. Since when did he? The Duke also had his doubts as to whether he should get caught. I barely said, hiding my trembling lips. He once complained to me that his fellow countrymen were working in poor conditions. I thought I was just advising him to help their life. I've heard that the farm is still a good place to pay less, but it's a bad thing. The Duke answered with a curious look. An eerie thought flowed over me. It was one thing to bring Yvonne. Maybe he was planning this in the first place to get out of slavery. You must be right. He probably wanted to help, as you said. The Duke nodded, assenting in my defense. It might be that my words sounded different for him. No matter how miserable he is, he the trash that sells people to the East for his own sake. That was what it was. Anyway, he made a great contribution by telling about dangerous elements. The Duke was speaking about it with no thought in mind, and he brought my youngest daughter, whom I was desperately looking for. I've engraved a great light for Eckert. So last dawn Derek asked him what he wanted as a reward. What did he want? I waited nervously for the Duke's word to drop. He said, don't kick me out of the family, instead let me learn true swordsmanship. His answer puzzled me. I asked again doubtfully. Not a well-made clothes or a title? Yes, then why did he sell his fellow countrymen to us? Moreover, as the Duke said, he could ask for 1 billion of gold for bringing the Rio princess. You asked me to run away with you a while ago, and now you want to stay in the Duke mansion? I can't quite figure out what he's thinking. As I frowned upon my troubled heart, the Duke moved as if he sympathized with my feelings. He asked again with a voice full of disapproval. Do you have to keep him around? Why would you want to keep him by Yvonne's side? Penelope, the Duke warned me in a rough voice. It seemed as if he has a valid reason to stop me, but I couldn't care less. I had to see him. I had to meet him. First of all, let me meet him. No, Father, please. I got sick of being punchlined by the Duke each time I opened my mouth. The day after tomorrow is your coming-of-age ceremony. Perhaps the most frustrating thing was the Duke's bluffing. If you get involved with a slave, and it would spread some dirty gossip, you're not going to have to deal with it at a time when everyone's eyes are on Eckert family. The Duke first brought up the story of the coming-of-age ceremony, which he had already mentioned. Then the answer is the same. I removed the expression as if I was going to beg him for and straightened my posture. There were 2 things I had to settle with him today. One was me to be allowed to contact with Eckles, and the other was me to be allowed do one more thing, so please cancel my coming-of-age ceremony, Penelope. The Duke flew into a rage at my words. Does it really matter to have a coming-of-age ceremony at this sensitive time, since there's a high possibility that they will gossip about you? This is the last resort. I thought of Eckles. If I grabbed that fucking bastard and struggled to see any re-end, it would have been a surprise. I needed a second best plan. If I cancel or postpone the coming-of-age ceremony, will the normal mode start be delayed? Even tough it may seem a blindfolded dumb idea, it's still worth trying. I want to escape this place. Are you going to cancel your coming-of-age ceremony for a mere slave? The Duke just vented his anger out on me. His nose was reddish. I stared at him with defy and spewed out. To be accurate, it's not just because of a mere slave. What is it? The rumor that the Rio princess is back must be all over the town. So, dear father, how funny would that coming-of-age ceremony be? What a Rio princess! What a fool! The Duke, furious, faced me, suppressing his anger. Why do you make such a face? He shut his mouth powerfully, as if he tried to bite something. I hid my face with my hand, not knowing how to react. My palms dried out of moisture. I tilted my head. The Duke spoke in a rather tired voice. Don't worry about Yvonne. I've come to agree with her that she'll be properly introduced once we've confirmed her identity. She's already staying in the mansion, so how are you supposed to refrain the leak? Come on, Penelope. Eckhart, stop. Do you know how much effort I've put into your coming-of-age ceremony? I've already sent out all the invitations to the palace that would never to be cancelled, so be sure to know that. I was disappointed by the resolute words that seemed to have already been made. I looked at the Duke of Eckhart with painful look and murmured quietly. My father asks me to understand, but he doesn't approve of either of the two my requests. Penelope, that's enough. I jumped out of my seat when he stumbled before he regained his balance. While leaving the office after bowing politely, the Duke did not stop me. I came up to my room and saw the two knights standing tall in front of the door. They looked like prison guards, not knights. I went coldly past them and entered my room. Emily, who had just finished fixing the bed, welcomed me. You've come back, miss. I feel sorry for Emily's hard work, but I immediately laid down on my neat bed. Noticing that I wasn't feeling well, she cautiously asked, is there anything you want for lunch? I'll tell the chef, Emily. Yes, what does she do all day? The good news is that the heroine can't get out of the mansion either. Just a moment ago, the Duke himself told me that he has no intention of announcing her return, not until her coming-of-age ceremony. Shall I ask Becky? Emily lowered her voice when she understood me. I nodded. Not too much detail, just simply ask her what she's doing at the moment. How she's spending the day at the duchy. Yes, my lady, I'll be right back. Emily quickly left the room. After a few minutes, my lady Emily, as she said, came back quickly and told me the news. In order to regain her memories during the day, she'll follow her maid around the mansion, and after dinner she'll go out for a walk alone. Without a maid? Yes, she's headed for the woods. Right, how did you know? Emily opened her eyes wide and bit back. Isn't it too obvious that she's going to see Eckles? What is she doing now? Emily hesitated a little in answering my question. Then she opened her mouth and looked at me, urging her to answer. She's having tea with the young Duke. I understand why she hesitated to answer. She was worried that I would be hurt because I looked unhappy right after I came back from a meeting with the Duke. But to my surprise, I really didn't even care. Of course, you'll have your lunch separately. It's all right. I have one more favor to ask of you, Emily. I quickly stopped Emily, who was trying to give me comfort. Oh, what is it? Give me your clothes. Emily, who heard my whisper, asked me with her eyes wide open. Well, why is that? Why? Because I have something to care about. But what if you get caught right away? Don't worry, just do as I told. Okay, miss, it's a secret escape, isn't it? Emily still seems confused, but she nodded her head gently. I'll get it immediately. Contrary to her concerns, she was strangely filled with determination as she left the room again quickly. Now all I have to do is sneak out of here. There's no other choice but to climb the wall again. This is the second time I'm escaping because of him. Damn, how troublesome. Just for that son of a bitch. I looked at the canister with gloomy eyes. With only 3 days left until the coming-of-age ceremony, time flew by. By the time the dusk fell and everyone in the mansion began to eat dinner, Emily also came to my room dragging a tray of food. Miss, she just started eating. Well done, let's start our preparations. I'm already ready. Are you done? She looked at me standing up in front of the dressing table. Folding up my long sleeves with a startled look, she spoke carefully with a worried look on her face. Wouldn't it be too obvious, miss? I could see myself in the mirror wearing in a big man's servant's clothes. Emily brought it in the smallest size, but there was still a lot left in the arms. But it wasn't a matter of size, no matter how much she picked up the clothes worn by the servants. Penelope is a princess, no matter who saw her on the way looked carefully. We can't control who will know the secret if we ask for help. I had no choice but to take out the bracelet I got from Derek in front of Emily, and right away I put it on my wrist. As soon as I did, the purple jewels glowed. Oh my God. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. The princess disappeared out of nowhere, and a pretty boy with short coriander hair appeared. Oh my, it's magic. Emily said, who almost fainted at my transformation. I nodded roughly. I'll be back in a little while. Memorize my face. I don't know if you can disguise as the boy. Where did you get that stuff? I didn't answer the question. I can't say. It was given to me by the devil, who had a heroine and refreshments during the day. Now that I'm going down, you should go out too, Emily. A husky voice flowed out, which was a little different from my original voice. Emily, who had repeatedly said "Oh my God," closed her mouth when she saw my arrogant face. She looked at me for a moment, then followed me on my way to the window frame. Miss, I think this is too dangerous. Why not go out the door with me? What do you tell them outside? Really? Are you going to say that the boy was hiding in the ladies' room? Oh my lady, I can't say that. When I smiled and said something, her face turned red for a moment, but it's so high. In front of the window frame was a pile of sheets I had tied up all day. Recalling the failure of the last festival, it was quite bulky this time, gathering all the fabrics I could find. The thought of holding onto the blanket again and trying to escape was most frustrating for me, the person involved, but I had no choice but to get outside the door and sneak out of the front guards. It was when I was sighing low, looking down at the distant bottom. System, momentary movement, an unexpected quest has occurred forward. If you still haven't met the limits of hard mode in 3 days, visit the capture target waiting for you. Derek, Callisto, Winter, Reynolds, Eckles. My eyes suddenly lit up when I saw the white square. I remembered my disguise. Looking at it blankly, I soon twisted my face. You crazy game. You should have come out before I tied up the blanket. The hard work that kept me dragging the blanket for the whole day went to nothing. With my fists clenched, I stared into the air and soon opened my mouth with deep breaths. Emily, yes, get out of here now and do your job, but how can I let you go down this rough road alone? You must do the right thing so that I won't be caught in time. Emily has to keep anyone from entering my room. To my voice, which was beginning to be irritated, Emily quickly answered with a timid voice. Okay, miss, you really have to be careful. Okay, be really careful. Won't you get out of the room? She hurried out of the room. Startled by my glaring eyes, the door was closed and silence came in the room. I looked at the white square window still floating in the air. Although I was annoyed by the fact that the quest appeared now, I was glad I didn't have to take the trouble of climbing the wall. As I reached out to make a choice, I paused on top of the system window for a moment. And then I shook my head to clear it. I had selected System. Eckles, would you like to move right now? Yes, no. When I pressed yes, my eyes flashed white immediately. I don't know why I'm so mixed up. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing in front of a building. I am here. The building was dark with no lights on except for the entrance, I realized while looking around the dreary neighborhood. This is a building like a prison where knights are kept under arrest. Surely the building was a prison. This place was more dreary and sparsely embedded than the building used by apprentices, and I walked straight into it. I had already thought of an excuse to enter the prison. There were only 2 knights guarding the entrance of the building, whether they had gone to dinner or not, but as I approached them they were reflecting on the excuse I had thought of. Someone popped out of the entrance with a quick step, even though it could be barely seen from the light of the lamp. I opened my eyes to the hair of the bay. Crazy damn bastard L. The 2 knights standing guard at the entrance bowed to Derek, who had just come out. Get in, boss, go through it. When he was near, I bowed my head as soon as he said hello briefly and moved right away. My heart fluttered like it would pop out of fear of being caught. It's all right, he never saw me transform. When I wear my bracelet, I put down my fast-folded sleeve to cover my bracelet. It's dark anyway, so he won't be able to see it well. By the time I was pretending to be a passing servant, as expected, he passed me by casually. It was the moment when I just lifted my head which I had bowed with a sigh of relief. He suddenly stopped walking. Hey. Derek suddenly turned around and called me. Did he notice my heart was about to pop out of my chest? I checked if my sleeves covered the back of my hand and managed to raise my head. Excuse me, did you call me? I didn't have to act because I have the husky voice of a servant. The orange gauge bar above Derek's head shines clearly in the dark. I gulped. You looks like a servant from the mansion, said the other man, who looked at me from head to toe. What brings you here? I'm here to pick up the laundry for the imprisoned slave. I calmly gave the answer I had prepared. Slave by whose command, princesses? At that moment his blue eyes' pupils dilated. Soon, however, he crumples his forehead as if he was displeased. Penelope, did she make you do it? No, Yvonne, the young miss did. I looked at his reaction as I said it. I purposely didn't avoid his gaze. It was a lie, but he might be suspicious for no reason. The guy who went out could have gone to check with the heroine, then there would be no more trouble. Cold sweat tricked down my neck. Suddenly, be careful with what you say, said Derek, who seemed to be lost in thought for a moment. Suddenly retorted ferociously, you're easy to go around spouting things that aren't confirmed yet. You must have been told to be careful. I was dumbfounded by the sudden turn of conversation. You asked me first. Why are you getting angry? After grumbling, I'll be damned if you started treating me very well. Suddenly, in my mind came Yvonne, who also talked about what she suffered from her brothers who were ill-tempered in the beginning of the week. You're such a nasty character, but I quickly bowed my head, for I was in a position of great trouble if he were to find out. I'm sorry, young Duke, I'll correct it. I'm so sorry. Let's bow down up to 90 like a servant. It's a pitiful sight. Derek asked with his eyes looking down in all haughtiness. Are you new? Yes. That's strange. This day is really full of weird things. My heart sank once again at his words. I couldn't answer, and was just frozen. You may go. Derek's permission finally fell with a clap of his tongue. Yes, thank you. As I tightened my bent head to the last minute, Derek, without a reply, turned around and walked away. Damn it. He then disappears into the dark forest. Looking at him, I carefully opened my wrist under my sleeve. Then I came to my senses and turned to the path. In a hurry I ran into Derek, which took more time than I thought. Well, I'm here to see the slave come in with the guards. Hearing my conversation with Derek, they opened the way for me. That slave guy is underground. Don't go upstairs, just go down the stairs. Thanks to the kind explanation, I was able to go to Eckles easily. As soon as I entered the building, the stairs led to a corridor. The dreary staircase with a sparsely lit lamp has been broken for quite some time. The end finally reached the prison cell. The room was all steel bars. Whether it wasn't used as often, the old prison was empty except for the last one, which the light doesn't even reach. There wasn't even a guard underground. They must be confident at the security. He's an apprentice, yet the treatment is terrible. The confirmation process is not complete yet, and we can't release him right away. Even worse, the environment was too poor. In addition, he was a servant of the family who brought the Rio princess. I could see how great the Duke and Derek's hostility toward him was. It's none of my business. As I was looking around the dungeon, I rolled up my sleeves and unfastened my bracelet. In the past, I would have felt at least a weak sense of guilt, saying this is because the Duke did not bring him in first as it was in the original story. But I couldn't even feel it anymore. His betrayal hurt me so much. As soon as the magic wore off, the flaming red hair fell over my shoulders. When I put the bracelet in my pocket, all I had left in my left hand was a big ruby ring. Time was running out, so I moved to the end without delay. I took a step at this end despite the sound of someone approaching. Eckles, stuck in the corner, did not move. I finally stood tall in front of my destination, pulled out a lamp from the wall, and lifted it over the bars. The light scattered over the darkness, and the gray-haired head crouched in a pitiful way. Hi, I said, breaking the silence. Despite the appearance of a man walking, his unmoving body tensed. Eckles raised his head slowly. My eyes, which had been squinting for a while because of the lamp's light, soon expanded slowly. Master, I can't believe you appeared out of nowhere, Eckles muttered with a blank look I have never seen before. He then got up from his seat and began to walk towards me step by step. He's locked up in such a gloomy basement that I thought he was being treated unfairly, but since there were no handcuffs, it seems that's not the case. I felt much lighter while observing the Eckles. Before I knew, he reached out his hand through the bars and I felt the coldness of another person on my cheek, so I hesitated and suppressed my body, which almost retreated. Am I dreaming? Eckles said to himself with a real doll-like face, as if he was a few days old at that moment. System, would you like to check Eckles' favorability? 18 million gold, fame 400. I wish this fucking situation was a dream more than anyone else, but seeing the system window clearly, it was never a dream. That can't be true. I answered with a wide grin and the palms on my cheek tensed. Only then did he realize that it was not a dream, but his jet-colored eyes which reflected the light shook violently. My lady, how did you get in here? He asked me, still not believing that the moment is real. I still didn't avoid the hand stroking my cheek. How are you? Eckles took a deep breath and then asked me back with his quiet voice, what about you, master? I am all right. His eyes, which used to be passionate, were silenced. I opened my mouth staring at him, which was as dull as ever. I've been wrong. So much as I had to sneak up on you like this, words that I wouldn't have brought up to him at all in the past were flowing out. Eckles was not shaken by my words. You were so far and desolate, with a bare skin like a crumbling sand castle. Did you hear the news? All your countrymen who were about to run away were captured and executed. Thanks to this, the remaining Delmans on the farm were scattered all over the country. I thought seeing his face would make me angry in no time. When I faced in his icy wall, he did not rise that much his head. It was tolerable in reply to my dry eyes. Eckles nodded silently. I uttered my words to him, which help I had intended to drown. I'd been thinking countless times for 3 days, why did you do that to me? Was there anything that I didn't do for you? Or maybe our status were so different even though I never cared about it. My gaze slowly went down and touched his neck. Still his neck is neatly tucked under a yellow beaded choker. Or is there some kind of ridiculous misunderstanding? Master, I've thought desperately. Eckles, I took my gaze from the choker and raised my head. But you said you didn't want money or title, and what's more, his face was still expressionless, but one of his fingers on my cheek flinched. I asked, whispering, rubbing my face in his hand as he does every time, did I offend you so much, master, to the point where I want to hang myself to death for buying you? Or did you hate me enough for you to bring out the real daughter of the Duke? That's Eckles slowly breathed, and being close I could his doll-like face turned slightly pale. Or did you want to change your owner who didn't even have the strength to give you a shave? That's... Eckles suddenly raised his voice. It's not like that, master. How dare I think such a thing? But why did you do that to me, Eckles? I tried to speak as softly as possible, but my arguing tone keeps coming out. It's difficult to suppress this intense feeling. Then I pushed his other hand that gently reached out to hold my face. He doesn't seem angry. He looked more like a person who is more worried about the rain more than anyone else. I can't help you anymore because you've put me in a difficult situation with my family. I could no longer help you then. Now who will your new owner be? That won't happen, he answered in a rare emphatic voice. I'll be relieved soon, so I don't need any more owners. What are you talking about, now that the Imperial Palace has learned that the accuser is a slave from the same Delman? To set a precedent for others, he's setting the grounds to the common people. Then why did you refuse the first brother's recommendation? That's why I can stay here without any doubt. I opened my eyes to an unsolved mystery. What if I had asked to be a small farmer for a cotton cloth or a title? He would have let me out of the mansion under that excuse. It's disgusting, but it's pure. To serve as a loyal servant, to repay the kindness of the family so that I could remain by your side, my master. By my side, I mumbled his words. Yes, by my master's side, he repeated his answer. Haha. At the same time I burst out laughing. It's so laughable that I can't understand what he's talking about. Ha, what are you talking about, Eckles? You've been by my side all this time, but thanks to your help with the real princess, I'm driven away by the Duke. But how could you possibly stay by my side? Then I will follow you, master, and support you when the Duke tells you to move out. Stop talking nonsense. At that moment I realized that everything I had been doing was useless. Eckles couldn't believe I was the closest character to him. The hand which was holding my face burned my skin. When did I ever say I wanted it? The blackish-red gauge bar on his head blinked dangerously. I knew I had to stop, but I couldn't stand the burst of anger. You made your own guess, you made your own conclusion, you crazy bastard. Not this time, master. What? It wasn't for you, it was for me. Not for you, but for me entirely. At that moment my eyes were stunned. I've always worked hard, predicted and acted accordingly to the character's actions, otherwise I wouldn't survive. But at this moment, when Eckles said that everything was for himself, my mind just went blank. Why, a stupid meaningless sound came out. Nevertheless, I really didn't know. What's the problem? I did everything you asked for. My breath became rough. Ever since I've decided to choose him as the male lead, I've always done my best. I'm trying to not get on nerves of the Duke and his 2 sons, so I desperately defending and taking care of Eckles. Everything you need, your treatment, your teacher, whatever you want. Sometimes I didn't even mind having to take a big risk. Obviously, everything progressed according to the game's strategy it should have been. Everything resolved for you, all that hard work is for you. But why? I grabbed him by the collar and asked in a desperate voice. Is it because I didn't order the clothes immediately, or maybe because I didn't look for a master to teach you swordsmanship sooner? Answer, why are you doing this now? Why at this point, only a few days before the escape? Why can't you make a rational action? I screamed at the silent man to shake him up. You love me, right? If you love me, why are you doing this to me? Why the hell? 99% of favorability was love. It has to be love. You love me, Eckles. Say yes. I look above on the top of his head while pleading no. It's more like begging. My hands were trembling. I stared at him desperately despite my evil thoughts. I knew his lips flinched and were shivering. You know, Eckles looked down at me and asked in a hoarse voice. His eyes shook for a moment. There's no way. I don't know. With that look of embarrassment, I burst into tears mixed with a strange laugh. I remember the moment when Eckles' eyes toward me became increasingly dangerous. From one point on, he showed his emotions little by little and made a rude demand one by one, and I regarded all that as a green light. Which slave in the world would look at his master with such rude eyes? No slave in the world will look at his master with such a rude look. Eckles' gray-colored pupil, which had been shaking, stopped at that moment. His chin stiffened hard. If you knew, why did you refuse when I asked you to run away? If I run away from you, then what is the difference? Because of the special situation of the game, I was considering it for a moment. Other male leads' routes are no better than now, despite the plunge and the unexpected situation. Even if it were the real Penelope, she wouldn't have done such a dangerous thing. It's all finished now, but in the end I still don't understand at all with his obsession to run away. So you want me to leave my house, my money, and be chased? If that's the case, then what? What do I say to my father and my 2 older brothers? Now I'm going to live my life as a homeless person and go to another country as a refugee, that's it? Or should I say it's because I'm crazy about slaves and I don't need status or pride? I don't want to do that. Before my words were finished, Eckles snapped back. It is unlikely that you will get out from this place. What? You had the most unhappy look on your face in the world and you never even tried to get out of this fucking house. What are you? I was going to ask back what that meant, but I closed my mouth because his eyes, reflected in the light, were strangely flashing. You don't know how worried I am since you were injured because you met Yvonne, Master. If I just killed her without a trace. So if I get rid of everything that threatens your position, will you smile? Eckles, who said that, suddenly smiled faintly. On the other hand, I caught my breath sharply. The eerie feeling crawled down the spine. I've always never understood his thoughts, but I never imagined he was hiding these sorrowful and terrible thoughts inside. Unconsciously, I was staggering back and removing my hand from him. He abruptly snatched my hand and forcibly put it back on his cheek. Then I'd rather help my master. You're unhappy to have her at home, and if I kill Yvonne, you'll become the real princess. So I've been thinking about it, using the Duke's own daughter. I gradually isolates my master from the corner of the house and makes the humans of this house take the responsibility for their deeds. Let go of me. It was the reason I wanted to know so much. But I no longer wanted to listen to his dark thoughts. Shocked, I tried to pull out of his grasp, but instead of letting go of me, he kept touching his cheeks against my hand. Why don't you give up on your purpose and sit down? Purpose? My heart stopped for a moment. I stuttered back. What purpose? I mean the reason you bought me at the auction and used me. And the purpose was to get me out of this crazy game. With all his favor, he noticed it. Everyone knew that I brought him in for some reason and behaved with thorough calculation. I froze hard just as I took a rough breath. What's that for? In response to that, the faint smile on his mouth grew a little deeper, as if laughing at me. If it's like that, with my own power I can achieve it. You can't overlook the one and only sword master in the Empire. I had no choice but to stare at him like a fool. Instead of touching the cheek of a man who has been fooling me, I couldn't even take out my hand. He looked at me like that and drooped his eyes a little like a dead puppy. But then I can have it. What I mean, you Penelope. He stared at me like the day he asked me to run away while slowly kissed the palm of my hand. And he continued talking with my palm covering his lips. You use me thoroughly for your purpose. You have sweet words like honey, but if I try to approach even a little bit, you run away immediately. The gray eyes that look straight at me don't look like the eyes of a person looking at their loved one. The white part of the eye filled heavily with red, his eyes turned bloodshot. He rather hates and despises me so, like a helpless person. You don't love me at all. Seeing how he was staring at me with such eyes, he finally said what I wanted to hear. I love you, Penelope. System 18 million gold. Check the favorability of Eckles by deducting the remaining funds, 999,999,999 plus. Even though I heard what I wanted, I twisted my face terribly. Favorability 99%. I got a confession of love, but I was still in this fucking game. Even though I am a native and a traitor to be torn to death by selling them all, there was no increase in favor. The remaining 1% of the favorability rating did not rise, and I had a feeling that at this moment I would never fill that 1%. I want you, Penelope Eckhart. Are you really crazy? That's right, you made me crazy like this. Eckles glared at me in the dark with his glistening eyes and chattered. You made me like this, and you pretended you didn't know. I think I'm going crazy, but what can I do? And yet I'm still in love with you. His eyes have finally changed into something more affectionate. It all seemed detestable and creepy to me. I was frozen to paleness and breathing hard, and he tilted his head to his side. Why are you shaking, master? Are you angry? I did everything you told me to do. Now I've proved my worth to everyone to be here, master. Are you as scared of me as you were when you first met me? What a pity, crazy little bastard. I couldn't stand it any longer, and I uttered with disgust. But he didn't care at all about the vulgar swearing. Rather, he moved a finger which was holding my hands, gently rubbing one finger firmly. To be exact, the index finger with the ruby ring. Don't tremble, master. Earlier I'm just spewing meaningless words. Nothing will happen. You are still the Princess of Eckhart, and I'm your one and only knight, the one and only. Why are you so worried like this when you are personally holding the leash of a man who's crazy about you? Looking at me with such loving and hateful eyes, Eckles' fingertips lingering closely on top of the ruby ring, as if he'll press it. The gauge bar above his head shone like blood that had rotted away. Only you who can control my leash, my dear master. I had no choice but to admit it completely. Eckles' route ending is failed. I didn't love him at all, and he knew it well. That was my defeat. I completely failed at Eckles' route, and it was time to find another route. Choker, as if to wake from a short daydream, the cloudy fog filled my head slowly now that I was sure it was all and I don't have to put myself in his shoes anymore. Why would I? An insolent dog can be disciplined by tugging their leash. Worth? You're not even worth it. I twisted the corners of my mouth, as if it was my mistake that I was shocked by failure. It felt like a lie. You bit your master. Master, shut up. Eckles' eyes shook once he caught my hand and forcibly touched his cheek, but I tore off from his hold. Penelope, in the meantime, his hand stretched out to hold me, but it hit the cold as I stepped back from the iron bars. Yeah, you're right, I brought you to take advantage of you, but what is that eventually? Because of you, rather than fulfilling my purpose, it turned into a mess 5 minutes before it's done. A dog should behave like a dog. What's the value of a dog biting his master? Eckles, after grumbling, I laughed with a disheveled face. He was no longer worth it. The moment when the face of Eckles was distorted like a slow motion. I pulled out the ruby ring roughly in front of him. Master, when he called me with his eyes wide open, I threw it as hard as I could into the bars without hesitation. Chang, hang! A sharp burst of sound rang out. The ring that flashed after hitting somewhere several times quickly disappeared into the darkness. Ever since I brought Eckles with me, the index finger that was never been removed from the ring is now empty. He looked devastated at the sight of my empty hands. I told you betrayal is death. Now you're dead to me, Eckles. Unlike when I came, I turned around without hesitation. That was the end. The ring was thrown away, rolling right into the darkness. There was a squeak coming from the wind, faintly blowing through the front. As she turned her head reflexively, her dark pink hair fluttered like falling petals. Wait. Eckles reached out. It was to grab her master, but before catching her, Penelope turned her back completely on him. Eckles' pupils began to shake uncontrollably. He needs to find the ring and give it back to her, but his master has already gone far away without even looking back. Don't go, master, wait. His master is still moving away while Eckles calls her nervously. Unlike his burning heart, the voice that was dry and hard was resentful. Master. But it was strange, at this point his master would have already gone. Even though she always acted as if she would send him back to the auction house with harsh words, she will eventually forgive him. She listened to everything he wanted and always left room for him. Even if he crossed the line, she always forgave him, so he can't give up his uncontrollable heart. But my master herself, who had tamed me so much, did not look back, because she made the son of a bitch crawl up and down without knowing the subject. The slender body showed no signs of stopping, but gradually moved away suddenly. He felt something was wrong. Master, don't go, there's still something I have to say. As if something hard was hitting his head, he suddenly came to his senses. His chaotic mind gradually cleared up. Why did the master throw the ring? Penelope. How did I look at that moment? Penelope, don't go. Eckles stretched his arm through the narrow bars to catch the woman moving away. Maybe it was because he was trying so hard a gruesome sound leaked out of his body, accompanied by dull pain. Of course he couldn't reach her. His arms stretched out into the dark pink hair, which had gone far away, fluttered in the air. Penelope, for the first time since being brought to the Empire, he's overtaken by the fear. Penelope, but the steps fade away, showing no sign of stopping. In the end, silence came. That was the end. His only master left in this cold, dark prison cell. Their ring was left as the only evidence of his close relationship with her. Eckles, who clings to the bars and looked at the prison hallway with a vain look, suddenly rubbed his lips. The ring! He was suddenly desperate, and then ran to the corner where he heard the ring being thrown away. The inside of the prison was so dark that he couldn't see an inch ahead. Without hesitation, Eckles fell down to the dirty floor and crawled like a dog and fumbled on the floor. Fortunately, the ring was narrowly stuck between the cracks in the stone floor just before it fell into the hole. He clasped it in his hand and went back to the light. It was where his master had just stood. The red ruby in the light was fortunately intact, however, under the ruby the gold ring was completely crushed. He can't put his fingers in it anymore, and he could see how hard his master had thrown it at the moment. Eckles flinched slightly while he carefully turned the ring around to check it. Why? He shook his head and muttered to himself he couldn't understand his previous master very well. The master just now, of course, he predicted that if he took Yvonne she would be furious with him. However, it wasn't supposed to be like this, like she's going to give up on him. My master wouldn't abandon me. Eckles thought, because you have to keep using me, Penelope, so even for that purpose she couldn't abandon him. It should be now you're dead to me, Eckles. The eyes that were throwing the ring, and the face that was turning away without even looking at him, seemed rather relieved, as if it were better. Why, Penelope? The firm belief that the master would not let go of him while bringing Yvonne to mansion began to shake little by little. It can't be. Eckles denied the reality with a confused face while holding the ring. This is only because his master is angry right now, that's all. Soon she'll be back when her anger passes, and as always with a beautiful smile like a flower. Eckles, it was then his name which had been hovering in a hazy imagination became a reality, and sank into his ears. A soft skirt swirled around his feet. Instead of joy, despair seeped in, because his body noticed before his head that it wasn't the voice of the person who laughed happily in his imagination. Are you sick, Eckles? Hearing a sweet voice, Eckles slowly lifted his head, which was leaning against the bars. Under the lamp's light, pink hair fluttered, blue eyes anxiously looking down at him at her sudden appearance. An unexpected and unimaginable anger seethed through him. Eckles sprang up from the floor and he grabbed her neck, reaching out through the bars of the cell. The woman suddenly caught her breath, struggled with her blue eyes wide open. Eckles looked insensitively at the small body, fluttering with embarrassment and amazement. You said if I didn't kill you and I took you back to the Duke, everything would work out, Eckles. I didn't reveal that I used my force because my master might be disappointed, and that's why I sold out all my fellow countrymen. I did what you said, Yvonne. If the eyes could kill a person, she would have been torn to death many times already. Though he's already strangled her neck so hard. Eckles gave off eerie chills. But my master said she'll never see me again. She thinks I'm dead, Eckles. Why? Yvonne's face, which had been white, turned red as if it would burst soon. Like there was a hideous bloodshot in her clear eyes, despite the slender figure of the woman, who was about to die. Eckles still held tightly her neck. What's wrong with Penelope? Answer me. As her pupils were loosened, she kept falling backwards. Yvonne tapped desperately on the arm of the urging Eckles. She was asking to be released so she could answer. While staring at her fiercely, Eckles grudgingly took off both hands that were covering her neck. Yvonne coughed wildly. After a long time the cough finally died down. She touched her neck with clear finger marks, asked with wide eyes. What's the problem? What's the problem? Eckles' eyes were ferocious. If you said you knew how to use it, you would have been given the cotton cloth right away. With my own strength, I have been formally knighted without having to do the dirty work of selling my countrymen. Yvonne cut him off in the middle and answered, even if you have a knighthood, you still can't stand beside the princess. Yvonne stared at him with a sad face, even though he was the man who almost strangled her to death. As a slave from an enemy country to who have been knighted, I'm sure it would be great. But a man without any wealth is no different than a commoner. Eckles. The princess is still in a far higher place. Poor guy, you know we're in the same boat. Why are you and I in the same boat? Eckles asked as if he chewed on a piece of shit. Yvonne only looked at him with sad eyes and did not answer. It felt unpleasant. He had no other choice but to admit it. They were crawling at the same bottom and they were scrambling to get out of it. One day he had a dream too. He would formally learn the sword and prove his ability, and stand beside his master as a knight, not a slave. It was a naive and pure dream. But when did it start? He was forced to realize no matter how hard he tried, he didn't see any signs of getting closer to his master. No matter if he begged her to find him a teacher to get a lesson, become a sword master, he was still a slave. In order to rise above that, everyone needed credit. It was Yvonne who encouraged him like that. On the day the monster appeared on the farm, slaves took care of her who had been injured in the attack. That was their first meeting. Eckles recognized at first sight that she was the Duke's real daughter. So he tried to get rid of her for Penelope. However, Yvonne sympathized with his vain dream even at the moment when his hands strangled her neck. The princess is confused now, perhaps because of the after effects of a sore throat. Yvonne soothed the upset Eckles with a throbbing voice. You must be surprised and upset that I suddenly showed up and things overlapped. It's sad that there were those who were executed, but it was for the best. Eckles, it's true that they were trying to escape. The princess will soon know your sincerity because no one in this house cares about her as much as you do. She comforted and added hope to the man who strangled her with an angelic face. Yvonne wanted a family and Eckles wanted Penelope. It was in an instant that the deal was made. She was able to get into the dukedom through him, and he took Penelope to his side through Yvonne. No, it was expected to happen soon, but Eckles often wondered if this was really the right way. Maybe she noticed his hesitation. Think about it, Eckles, if you hadn't done this, what would have happened to your master? Yvonne softly spoke to him as if she were singing a lullaby. Eckles was lost in thought, as if possessed by her words. That day when Penelope returned alone from the imperial palace without a carriage was clear. He couldn't leave the girl who had her face buried in her hands and sobbed. If he does that, she would have died in the contempt and despair of those duke and aristocratic cubs. In front of Eckles' eyes, Penelope, who cried out with an unsuccessful goal, came to mind. Please help me, heal me, no help me. Heal me. He had to rescue her from here. He need to get her out of here so she can live. Eckles' eyes, imagining the unfortunate vision of his master, were gradually lost in thought. So he didn't notice when Yvonne secretly took out something and mumbled. The Otome whisper of a spell. Only you can save the princess, Eckles. Yvonne put something ancient in front of Eckles' eyes. The blue light gradually leaked from the broken piece she was holding. Eckles looked at it as if he had been completely possessed. The blue glowed over his grayish pupil. But the princess hates you. Are a pitiful and miserable person. You're nothing more but a slave from a defeated country, Yvonne whispered, her brainwashing. So don't trust her too much. She's so cold and arrogant. If you get on her nerves, she may send you back to the slave market or kill you. You know the scary rumors about the princess, right, Eckles? Today what she did to you proves that. I'm the only one you can trust. We're the only two in the world. We're in the same boat. Why are you and I in the same situation? For my master you have to die someday. Yvonne, who was whispering in the other person's ear with her body clasped over the bars, suddenly stopped. He rarely opened his heart to her, even though she had been shown dozens of times the blue-colored mirror. Too much time had passed just to plant hatred for the fake princess who doesn't love him. Despite being distracted by the artifacts, Yvonne changed her face as she looked at Eckles, who showed a strong obsession with Penelope. I need to find the piece quickly. All traces of her innocent and angel-like appearance disappeared from her face. She murmured at the end, collecting the piece she had taken out with a distorted face like a demon. Yvonne arrived sooner than expected due to a long delay. While climbing the stairs, I hurriedly hid behind the door at the sound of footsteps. And the sight that happened was just a wonder and horror. Watching everything the heroine did, I climbed the stairs with my frantic beating chest and breathless. When I finally got out of the building, I barely held back a piercing scream. It was real. All the things I saw in Soleil weren't an illusion. I ran through the woods in fear, as if I was being chased by someone. Maybe the heroine noticed me and will come after me with that blue-colored piece of mirror. I almost fell over many times from looking back. I could see the huge, brightly lit mansion from a distance not long after I got out of the woods and arrived at the mansion. Ha ha! I slowly returned to my senses with the beautifully lit mansion around me. At that moment, the strength in my legs left, and I was about to collapse. I managed to hold on to the tree next to me and kept breathing roughly. My heart calmed down little by little. When the fear was gone to some extent, I realized that I had left without the disguise. I hurriedly took the bracelet out of my pocket and put it on my wrist. After a while, the purple jewels flashed. I trudged along with a sigh of relief, or maybe it was of pain. It was when I reached the back door of the mansion. Someone was walking nervously along the door. Emily, I called her quietly. Miss Emily jumped in place and tried to call out to me. When she saw my transformed figure, she closed her mouth. She stamped her feet and whispered to me quickly, "Why did you come back so late?" That woman went to the forest for a walk. Originally, Yvonne will meet Eckles before the dinner and quickly return. But the plan is all broken down. I nodded and spat out quietly, "I saw it." "Did you run into her?" "No." "Then let's go inside. For now it's late. They might find us strange." I entered the back door from earlier and stopped Emily from wondering. The exhaustion caused by the intense emotions took over my whole body. Tired and exhausted, I couldn't even think anymore. I quickly climbed the central stairs with Emily. In the meantime, I ran into some servants, but apparently I looked so different that they didn't care. When I finally got to the second floor, I could see 2 large guards standing in front of the door without moving. As I stood behind Emily and went over there, the guards were alert. "Who are you?" Emily said what she had already been told to this person that the young lady called. "The lady called you? I've never seen you before. Where do you belong and why were you called?" "I'm a child working in the garden. A few days ago she lost an accessory while she was taking a walk, and asked me to find it." The guards looked back at me with suspicious faces. "Is it true?" "Yes." I rolled up my sleeves. On my wrist I had a bracelet that was not suitable for a young boy to wear. As soon as I found it, I'm afraid I might drop it and lose it, I answered calmly. The guards, who never imagined of me being the boy in front of them, looked at each other and soon turned their heads. "Go in." Emily and I came safely into the room. Now I hurriedly took off my bracelet and clothes and handed them over to Emily. Now it was Emily's turn. She replied, "I'll be right back, miss," and went out wearing the servant's clothes and the magic bracelet Derek gave me. It was fortunate the magic was not limited only to me. While waiting for Emily, who had gone out to deceive the guards, I turned around and changed into my clothes. I washed up quickly and immediately laid down on the bed. My mind is so chaotic I wanted to fall asleep, but I couldn't. The sleep definitely wouldn't come to me. Yvonne is with the Layla clan and Eckles had been brainwashed with that artifact. It was hard to say if the brainwashing she did is not working, since Eckles' behavior changed extremely. In addition, it may not only apply to Eckles but also to Derek and Reynold. Fortunately, the artifact is not in perfect condition. I had a hunch Yvonne is trying to find the piece of the mirror I have and complete the artifact. You can't activate that. It was used by the ancient Layla clan. It's to bring the opponent into the most desperate situation and destroy their mind. Vinter's heavy voice echoed in my ear 3 days before the night of the coming-of-age ceremony. My plan failed to receive a full favorability from one of the ML. And the heroine who appeared earlier than the original story is brainwashing the ML. I'm going to die if I stay like this. This was what my instinct said. As the hard mode time limit was approaching, I instinctively noticed that death was closing in front of me. Suddenly I felt an endless sense of hopelessness, as if I had run into a wall. My eyes dimmed. How can I get out of this fucking place without dying? I spent the night with eyes open, calculating, thinking, and desperately trying to figure out the remaining favorability. It was dawn. I rose quietly from my bed and rang the bell. My loyal, dedicated maid forced her way into my room with sleepy eyes. "Miss, you called." I stared at her with bloodshot eyes. Emily was shocked by my appearance. "Are you perhaps didn't get any sleep?" Emily, yes, miss, tell me, how does the coming-of-age ceremony proceed? What the coming-of-age ceremony? Emily could not hide her bewilderment at the sight of me calling her early in the morning and making a sudden question. But she quickly replied with a grimace. Usually receiving the official seal of the imperial palace upon receiving the royal edict, the older family member will give you a congratulatory greeting and share the sari state of wine with immediate family members. To celebrate becoming an adult. Okay, good. I was glad. One thing went exactly the same as the game. Having been lost in thought for a moment, I soon gave her a secret order that no one should know about. When the day is bright, go to the head of the white rabbit. The head, yes, go and tell the head. When I whispered something secret in her ear, Emily widened her eyes. Oh, miss, well, that's, you can do it, right, ha? But she hesitated in an instant with a worried face. What if the office's head refuses the request? Then tell him to pay the debt you owed me the other day, not the request. Emily grinned her lips with a zinc look. I asked in a cool voice, can you do it or not? If you can't, I'll have someone else to do it. Oh no, I'll do it, miss, I can do it. Emily shook her head hurriedly. I stared at her while she kept saying I can do it repeatedly, and opened my mouth and made a grim move. Emily, this has to be done more secretly than ever. Oh, Mississippi. You know, if you get caught, right? Emily hesitated in tears and soon nodded slowly. I'll trust you from now on, Emily. I hope you don't betray my trust. I'll do it, miss. I'll make sure to help you succeed. Emily's pupils glistened curiously, as if she was asking when she hesitated. When I first came here, it was that dreary face I saw when she was stabbing myself with a needle. She's like a wicked maid of evil. Only then did I let go of my stiff expression and smiled faintly. There was still one way to try to escape. Although the risk was extremely high, and I don't even know if it works in this crazy game. I can't be a fool and just die. I glared at the air. Emily left the mansion as soon as dawn breaks as instructed. I came out of the mansion with 2 guards behind. It was more frustrating to stay inside the room than to be watched. Unlike my gloomy heart, the sky was bright like a lie last night. I felt dizzy, perhaps because I didn't sleep a wink. Going around the building, I headed to the glass greenhouse. The guards opened the glass door with a quick gesture and stood on both sides of the entrance. Am I a prisoner? I was staring at them with cold eyes, and soon I sighed and entered through the glass door. Don't let anyone in, I ordered as I passed by before closing the door. It was the night before the storm, but I didn't want to ruin it by running into the wandering Rio princess. It was annoying that 2 big guards followed behind, but it was good to be able to prevent this. I walked inside the greenhouse. The glass greenhouse is full of colorful and mysterious flowers. But it didn't really catch my eye. Finally, I stopped at a seat by the corner. Small white wildflowers bloomed gently among the green grass. It was the bouquet of flowers that Eckles had picked up for me the other day, and that he had plucked flowers for me and made a flower crown. I looked down at them for a moment with an expressionless face standing in front of them, and soon lay flat on it smiling at the flowers. I whispered, "You're the only one." A few days later I received a flower crown. And I was full of hope that the escape was coming soon, but now all those things felt distant. Slowly blinking, I soon closed my eyes completely. I'm tired. It was quiet everywhere. I seemed to be falling asleep, but I couldn't fall asleep completely. I sighed and lifted one arm and covered my eyes. It wasn't just a nap or awakening with eyes closed. It was like floating somewhere in my chaotic consciousness. Click! I suddenly felt a faint presence of someone. It was the sound of the door opening. I'm sure I told them not to let anyone in. Eyes covered with my arms frowned. I got up and thought I'd fire the one who disobeyed my order, but I just gave up. Even I was annoyed by his noisy body. I could hear the sound of the intruder's feet coming to me without hesitation. Whether they were willing to hide their presence, or not, guards, or is it Emily? In a rather hurried walk, I had got the dedicated maid I had sent to the White Rabbit this morning. I was curious what kind of answer she had from Winter. If he refused to the end, things would bother me. By the time I was wondering what to do with the remaining 2 days if he finally refused. The step of someone approaching suddenly stopped beside me. I uttered irritably, covering my eyes with my arms. I have already told you not to let anyone in. Does anyone includes members of the imperial family? But the returned voice belonged to a totally unexpected man. I lowered my arm. The sudden flash of light made my eyes ache. A brilliant golden color and a red ruby shone through the darkness. Callisto, am I still half asleep? I was staring blankly at the intruder before me. Suddenly a pair of red rubies came very close. The hairs tickled the forehead, as if they were almost golden. The man said, frowning at me, and crinkled his nose. Oh my God, you shouldn't wake up, I haven't kissed you yet. He pierced my ears more clearly with his low-pitched sound of laughter. Only then I came to my senses, as if I was doused in cold water. Your Highness, after raising my upper body, I almost hit my head with the prince, he said. Oops. And he dodged his body humorously. I panicked, and soon stammered and opened my mouth. Your Highness, how did you get in here? You've got some pretty loyal escorts, Callisto answered carelessly. Shrugging his shoulders, everyone fainted and did not dare block the Crown Prince's entry. Fainted. Who cares? I hit it a little hard with a knocking no, it's not, but I don't know why the conversation flows like this. But it suddenly made me feel better when I heard that he knocked them out, perhaps because of the Duke's order. Or because he followed me without listening to me cursing dirtily. Next time I'd rather knock them out than go to the wall. When he asked, why is your face so stupid, and I said, oh my God, and I came to my senses. Why are you here? As soon as my embarrassment, which was caused by sudden appearance of the man, disappeared, my cold voice popped out without realizing it. With my sour expression, the prince burst into laughter, as if I was dejected. Can I come to my fiancée's house at my will? I've never heard about that before. Which one of my older brothers are you engaged to? In addition, when I calmly responded to the bullshit that he started, the man frowned. What kind of terrible joke is that? I never thought that you can be so mean. I'm serious. After a short reply, I picked up my clothes that were worn out from lying down and got up from my seat. Then I turned and looked at the Crown Prince. He sat crouching on the lawn regardless of the crumpled fancy uniform. The grass was a little smudged at the end of the white uniform trousers. I narrowed my forehead and reached out my hand to him. Stop it, get up, Your Highness, your clothes will get dirty. The Crown Prince looked at my hand in front of me with a curious look. It seemed that his clothes would be completely dirty. What are you doing? Come on, I waved my hand and urged. Then at last he snatched my hand and got up from his seat. When I realized that he's still holding onto my hand, I tried to tug them, but this time the Crown Prince did not let go of my hand. I looked down at it for a moment, and thought I'd force myself to break out from him, but soon I just turned off my nerves because I didn't think it would be easy to let go. A strong strength was forced to the fingers, tingling them. I walked away, leaving him like that. The Crown Prince was approaching me silently until I reached to the table in the middle of the glass greenhouse. I felt hot warmth in my hands. I just realized that I had a crush, but that didn't change anything between us. I am in a difficult situation and I can't care about such trifling feelings. Just our hands holding once won't make my heart pound like a child. My heart didn't even shake. It didn't matter. Sit down. Arriving at the table, I offered him a seat. Only then did the Crown Prince sit down in the chair with my hand in his grip. My bloodless hands are starting to get sore. I didn't express myself and shook the bell lying on the table a couple of times. It was a signal to the maid in charge of the greenhouse to bring refreshments. The Crown Prince looked at me as if he had not expected it. I thought I was gonna get kicked out right away. How dare I do that to the Crown Prince? I'm such a commoner person. Did the Duke give you new teacher of the imperial court etiquette for the coming-of-age ceremony? He praised me for being so perfect that he had nothing to teach me anymore. As I clenched my teeth and answered with a smile, the Crown Prince squinted his eyes and giggled. Soon after, a maid opened the glass door and brought refreshments. When she came closer, I saw the maid's face were pale. He knocked the guards out and broke, and so it meant that it was true. I looked with pitiful look at the back of the maid who was leaving the room and ran out, and then turned my head towards the Crown Prince. What brings you here? I brought you a present for your coming-of-age ceremony. A present? I ordered them to bring it in advance because there were so many. All sorts of junk gifts will get tangled up on the day of the coming-of-age ceremony, I answered Callisto, who gave me a simple reply, looking with a little surprise. You already gave me a present last time. That was a reward. I forgot that it was my own reward, and I nodded at his words and casually spat it out. But you don't have to come and tell me in person. Why didn't you just order someone under you like you did back then? The Crown Prince stared at me with an expression of absurdity. Why are you so slow to get it? I tilted my head because I didn't know what he meant. What? Of course I came to see you, otherwise why would I come all the way here in this busy situation? The moment I heard his obvious answer, as I was in daze. Unlike my mind that left me, my heart was fluttering. My vision was shaking. The Crown Prince added with a face with a grumpy heart. Do I have to say this with my own mouth to make you feel better? You've got a dull side which I have to crack every time, Your Highness. When I came to my senses, I called him like a sigh. My heart shook constantly. No, it wasn't. I bit the flesh inside my mouth tightly, and soon opened my mouth. I'm glad you're finally here. I would be too busy to give you an answer on the coming of age day. If I can give you a clear answer to your proposal, I'll tell you. And it was a moment when I tried hard to end the talk. Wait a minute, Princess. Suddenly the Crown Prince raised his hand to stop me. Then I made a sound of confusion. I'd like to ask you one thing before I hear it. The Duke, is his financial situation difficult these days? Or are you being neglected because you're not the real daughter? Oh my God, is he still discriminating against you as an adoptee? What do you mean? I couldn't understand what the Crown Prince was saying as I looked at him with a puzzled look. He suddenly reached out to me. All that's left of you is skin and bones. My left wrist, which was lying on the table carelessly, was caught in a big grip and lifted by the Crown Prince. What are you doing? What's wrong with your look, which I have never seen before? The Crown Prince glared at me with a fierce look, just blinking my surprised eyes. He grabbed my arm and jumped out of his seat. Get up. Well, Your Highness. I clasped his hand in amazement. What the hell is wrong with you all of a sudden? At this rate, the epitaph will be inscribed on the memory of the first noblewoman who starved and died of malnutrition in the Empire. The Crown Prince shrank with a low voice. Then he swung my arm. He caught my wrists, swaying about as he shook them. Were grotesque. As I could see, I had a lot things to worry about these days, so my face seemed to have gotten a little thinner. I wasn't in a situation where I can put some food through my throat, so I just starved. That's why I was a bit embarrassed. Without noticing, I lost the words to explain my thin wrist. Go and pack right away, the Crown Prince growls and spits out roughly. You must go to the Imperial Palace. What surprised you the most in this video? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell icon for updates.